Hello, friends. Um, Welcome to the Dagmar Babi podcast. This is going to be one of the most interesting episodes that we're going to have. We have the most wonderful and one of the most inspirational people that I personally know and follow. We have Andreas in our session today. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about his life, everything he's been through, his career, his programming journey, his projects, open source initiatives, and so much more, including faith and personal beliefs and advices, and just so much more. So, this is going to be a very lovely session. Welcome, Andreas.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to be here.
All right, all right. So, I'm Dagmawi. It might be a bit hard to pronounce my name. I live in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It's in the East African side. Have you ever been anywhere near?
No, I don't think so. I've never been to the African continent, but I'm very interested in going someday at least.
Oh, okay. That should be fun. If you ever, you know, plan a visit, you could just hit me up and I can get you all set up.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, so I recently graduated with a software degree just a couple months ago. I'm 24 years old, and I've been following your YouTube videos for a really long time, ever since the car talk sessions that you used to have.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been a big fan, and SerenityOS and Ladybird did not exist back then, so it was just operating system and everything like that. So let's just start with an introduction. Um, could you introduce yourself in your own words to everyone that watches?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Andreas Kling, and I have been a programmer my entire life, ever since my father brought home a computer from work that he got when I was like 3, 4 years old. And for some reason, he allowed me to play with it, which was fantastic because it just let me build a relationship with computers at a very early age. This would have been in the early 1990s, so it was a rare opportunity back then. And yeah, I had this freedom to play with it, and I think it felt very natural to me as a child because when you're a child, you can kind of learn on anything. Um, and whatever you have access to, you just learn. So that was fortunate for me. And I started programming early on because back in those times, every computer came with like a programming language. That was just natural back then. Nowadays, you have to take extra steps if you want to program your computer. Like you have to download things, install things. But back then, programming was kind of one of the user interfaces for the computers. So it was more common back then that people just knew how to do that. So my father had some coworker who was interested in programming, and I thought that was the coolest guy ever because he knew how to program the computer. So I just looked up to him so much, and um, I just wanted to be like him. And I realize now that my father's coworker was just some nerdy guy in an office, but when I was a kid, he seemed like the coolest guy.
Okay, okay.
And yeah, so I kind of just grew up loving computers, and uh, obviously ended up in a career doing computers as well. But I never went to school beyond high school because I kind of dropped out in high school because I didn't fit into the whole school thing where you have to sit down and pay attention and study what they tell you. I would get bored, and I was much more interested in, I guess, silly things like going to parties and drinking beer. And studying was not interesting to me. Um,
Wow,
and
okay.
yeah, that something that had a lot of consequences in my life, of course. But even so, I still always learned about programming in my spare time. Um, And that's how I was able to get pretty nice jobs later on. Even though I had no formal education, I was still able to apply for programming jobs at companies like Nokia and Apple. And I spent many years working at those companies. And I think it's one of the wonderful things about programming and our industry in general is that if you just learn the skill, nobody really cares where you're from or if you have a diploma or what your background is. They just care that you got the skill, and anybody can get the skill. If you have internet access, you can become a great programmer, I think. So it's a very open and sort of um, it's a great environment in that way, I think, our business. Yeah, so that's kind of my ancient background, I guess. And yeah, as I said, I ended up working at some of these big tech companies, and I wanted to work on browsers because that's what I've always done. Even before I had tech jobs, I would work on browsers in my spare time. I used to work on the KDE open source project back in the day. That was like, I guess, almost 20 years ago now, but um, they had a browser back then called Conqueror that I started working on a bit just for fun. And it was, I don't know, it was just something fun about making browsers, I guess, because you just sit in a browser all day, right? And if you can work on that thing, then that's really fun because it's the thing that you use the most. And I always felt like the funnest thing to work on as a programmer is the stuff that you use yourself. Um, and because it's so rewarding, right? Like you solving your own problems, you're improving your own computer experience. And I spent a couple of years at these tech companies working on browsers. So at Nokia, working on their mobile browser, and then at Apple, working on the Safari browser. But in 2017, I guess I left Apple, and it was it's funny because like the Americans are about to have an election now, and it makes me remember 2017 because the one of the big reasons that I left Apple was because I just didn't care that much about America and American problems. And after they had their big election in 2016, that was all people wanted to talk about. People were so upset, um, and it seemed like people who used to be so interested in programming, now they just wanted to talk about politics, and they wanted to be angry about politics. And I'm from Sweden. I'm not American. I don't really care about American politics that much, and I just want to make a browser. So I left, and um, in some ways that was good, but I also didn't have a plan. And as I mentioned earlier, I had this issue that I would rather drink beer and party than I would like to study. And when I was now unemployed suddenly, that was sort of my default fallback behavior, was to just do drugs and don't do anything productive. And that ended up being pretty destructive. And I think I lasted like 6 months without a job before it went too far, and I had to go to a rehab program because it escalated to the point where like I couldn't continue living that way, and um, that was pretty bad. And I went to a rehab here in Sweden, which was it was sort of based on this 12-step program. I don't know if you're familiar. Maybe you have that in Ethiopia as well. And I learned a whole lot of things when I had to go to that program. One of the most important things I learned was that there are a lot of people just like me who have the same type of problem that if we start drinking or doing drugs, then we just don't stop. And I had never confronted that before. and I'd never really seen it so clearly. And it was unpleasant, to face that, but at the same time, it was really nice to go to rehab and meet with all these people and learn that there's sort of a way out of it. And it's the way out of it is in a place where I had never looked, which is spiritually. So there's like a spiritual path out from these terrible patterns of behavior, um, and that was lovely, and very painful, of course, because you have to do some really painful exercises, where you have to face all the terrible things that you've done, and you have to talk about them. But um, at the end of that, I came out, and when it was over, I think it took 3 months. And when it was over, I had all of this time, and I didn't know what to do, because it used to be that, if you're partying and having drugs and stuff, then it's easy to spend a day because the days just disappear. But now I had all this time and nothing to do. And I started programming because it's what I've always done. And that's when SerenityOS was born, because um, I had no particular goals. So I just started building software. And over time, it sort of turned out I was building an operating system. And originally I built like these independent things, but then at some point I just put them together because, hey, these three parts are kind of together could make an operating system. And I was very scared at the time of falling back into bad habits, like if picking up a beer or some drug or something like that. And I wanted to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I decided to name the project SerenityOS from the Serenity Prayer, so that forever I would always be associated with this thing called serenity. And I couldn't run away from it, right? And it seems to have worked. And because now people know me as like the Serenity guy, and I can't run away from the Serenity Prayer, even if I try, which is exactly what I wanted. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the longer introduction to how SerenityOS came to be. And
Okay.
obviously, originally it was just me, but then I started posting about it online, and more people, they saw my posts. I made some videos about it. People saw that, and they started working on it as well. And they found that it's kind of fun to work on random bits and pieces of an operating system, and especially when there isn't like a deadline or a schedule or a plan at all, but instead it's just like people who do this little. Everybody picks some little thing that they want to do and they try to do it. Um, so a lot of people had fun with that, and over time, I think now it's over 1,000 contributors who worked on it, which is crazy. Um, and I'm really grateful that I was able to create something that people had so much fun with. And I don't actually work on it myself anymore, um, as you maybe know, because we started building a browser for it, and then I just had so much fun with that I kind of forgot about the rest of the operating system. And that browser now is Ladybird, which is my full-time job these days. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to raise some money, so I've been able to have employees, and that's kind of where we are today. We're building a web browser, but it started as this operating system project. And how's that for an introduction? Pretty long,
That was a
but
very
yeah.
beautiful introduction, actually. You basically gave us an introduction to a bunch of things I wrote about. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I would like to go back to I guess, to the addiction and every part of that. How old were you when that started?
Oh, when it started, I was probably 12 or 13, maybe. The
Wow. Okay.
first time that I took a beer from a parent, I think.
Hmm. Okay.
And um, But I think I was 14 the first time I got really drunk, and it was it was a bizarre, kind of strange story actually, because we there were a couple of friends that we had. One of my friend's fathers was like out of town for a night, and he suggested that we should all get together at his father's place and we should try to get some alcohol and get drunk. That was the whole plan. And we didn't know anybody who was old enough to buy alcohol. So what I did was I went on ICQ, which was this like instant messenger that was popular at the time. And you could search on ICQ for like people by location, by age. So I just searched for people who were online in my hometown that were like older than 20. And I think like 3 people were online, and I just messaged them like, "Hey, can you buy me beer?" And one of them said yes.
Wow, okay.
And that's how we got drunk. How we got real drunk the first time.
Okay,
Um,
how did you
so
know
this rather, yeah.
how did you know it was a problem? Like how did you know it was an addiction
Well,
or something?
that's a good question. I think I didn't understand that at the time. It was only much later that I realized. But the thing that happened the very first time is the same thing that happened every other time, which was I would drink and I would start to feel different. And I just love that feeling of being different because I'm not myself. This is myself, but a little different and a little strange and a little interesting. And that was the thing that I just fell in love with, of this feeling different somehow. And um, my friends, they were not like that. Like they would get drunk and then they would feel bad and they would regret it. And me, even though I felt bad and I threw up and I was had a terrible hangover the next day, the thing that was in my mind was that like I just can't wait to do this again. I just want to do it again as soon as possible, and feel weird and strange again. And that thing kept happening again and again. Like anytime that I would drink or I would try any other drug, I would smoke something or swallow a pill or something like that, and I would start to feel different, and I would just feel like this is amazing. It's different, and I love to be different. And I just wanted to always find new ways to feel different. And I know that there are different kinds of addiction. I think like people have different things that they like about doing drugs, but for me, it was that I guess like mind altering thing where you feel different, and to me that was an escape from the person that I really was, just to be able to be somebody else for a moment. Um, and I just had this unstoppable thirst for that sensation of being different. And I didn't understand that it was an addiction until I went to rehab, honestly. Um, but if I had been more objective, I would have seen it a long time before that, because I had like very destructive behaviors and I was very unpleasant to the people around me. But I couldn't see any of that. Um, I just felt like, oh, I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just hurting myself. And what does that matter? It's like these kind of classical addiction
Hmm.
excuses.
Hmm.
I'm not hurting anybody but myself. But yeah, I couldn't figure out that I was addicted until I went to rehab and I met all these people who were just like me. And I would listen to them, and they would sit and say these things. And it's so much easier when somebody else gives you these stupid addiction excuses. It's so much easier to say, wait a minute, these are silly excuses. You're just an addict. And sitting in these meetings with people where I one after the other they talk, and I think, wow, this guy is such an addict. Uh, Eventually, when it's your turn and you sit there and you say the same stuff, uh, you kind of figure it out that, damn it. Um, but that was really healthy to discover, I think. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
that's kind of how that worked out.
Um, you did say there was a spiritual aspect to, I guess, healing from that. Can
Very
you,
much.
yeah, can you tell us all about that?
Sure. So the the counselor that I had in rehab, or a therapist, or I don't know exactly what his title was, but the man who was leading us, he talked about addiction as a sort of spiritual bankruptcy. That if you don't have spirituality in your life, then addiction sort of is a replacement for that very easily. And if you allow it, it will sort of occupy the same space that's meant for your spirituality. And I that really resonated with me, because I sort of lost touch with everything spiritual in my life. And I was just living very much on the sort of material plane. Um, and I had no relationship with any kind of higher power or anything like that. Instead, I was more like running away from it, and I didn't want to think about those things because they seemed like, I don't know, intimidating, I suppose. And what we did in therapy was that, or in rehab, was that we tried to sort of reconnect with spirituality, and open up to the idea of something greater than yourself, something a higher power that wants good things for you. And um, I know that, there people have many different approaches to spirituality these days, and some people don't believe in anything, but um, I think I didn't believe in anything either when I went there, but I came out feeling like there's definitely something greater than me that wants me to have a better life. And whether that's like some kind of God, or if it's just like the people in my life, or the community around me, um, or something else, I don't know. I have no idea what it is, but I was able to connect with the idea of it, which was tremendously valuable, because I had just, like I said, like I would just make these excuses that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hurting anybody, just myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I just lived in my own head, and I didn't consider myself as part of something greater. And perhaps that was the real revelation for me about spirituality, is that not only is there something greater, but you can be part of it. You can be part of something greater than yourself. Um, and it's funny, I haven't thought about these things for a while, but
I know it's a bit odd to ask people on a podcast. Are you like a Christian, or is there like a Sweden religion thing?
so I'm born into the Lutheran Church here in Sweden,
Okay.
but I haven't been sort of regularly practicing any religion for a long time. Um, so I don't know. Uh, Sometimes I feel like it's something that I'm being drawn back towards. Um, and I have family members who are quite religious, and um, when I look at them, I see that they have something very nice, and it seems to be doing really good things for them. And I don't know. I think I sort of overdosed on skepticism when I was younger, and it's taking a long time to undo all of that work, or undo all of the damage from that. So I wouldn't call myself a Christian today, but I'm certainly feeling myself sort of drawn back towards Christian values, um, and sort of all of the other nice things about the Christian community, like taking care of each other, and um, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
That's
so
it's so funny
appropriate.
that you ask about these things. Yeah, I love these questions. They're so wholesome.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you a Christian yourself?
Yes, I am a Christian. I guess faith is one of the most important things for me. Um, Much like you, I had a pretty weird past, I would say. But I guess it's the Christian aspect of things that brought me back and made everything very organized. So, in fact, I used to hold a podcast on this social media called Telegram. I don't know if you're
Hmm.
aware of it. Yeah, I wanted to make things a bit different, because we only have like these local guests and local techie people and everything. And I was like, no, we need to go abroad. We need incredible people as well. And I was like, God, please help me. And the first person I thought of was you, because I'm a big fan and I think you're very inspirational. So I was like, God, please let him say yes. And I texted you and you're like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, no way. This is not real. So I was like, okay, this is a really a good thing, I guess. I feel like it's in, his plan for this conversation to be out, I guess, in some ways. So yeah, I do believe it's I'm a Christian. So okay, while all of this was happening, were you married, or did you get married after?
No, I've been married for a long time, for 11 years now, and uh, all of this was sort of happening while I was married. And I mean, it started before I was married and it continued. But my wife and I, we have a very good relationship, although it was very difficult for a while when I had to make changes, and I had to confront these things, and I hadn't been honest about these things. I was living very much um, with secrets and lies and all these things, and that's a very difficult thing to undo. Um, and yeah, it was a challenge, but we've come out much stronger afterwards. I would say, like now we have a fantastic relationship, and we're much stronger than we've ever been. And I'm really grateful that she stuck with me this whole time, and she believed that I could. Um, I guess she always saw me as better than I saw myself. So she always believed that I would be able to um, become a better person, even though I was very skeptical sometimes. I thought, like, I don't know if I can do better than this, but
Hmm.
she was right. I could do a lot better. Um, and yeah, my wife is she's been great, absolutely great. And I don't think I would have made it without her, honestly. Um,
Yeah, it's very wholesome. I'm very happy for you. That's
thank you.
that's very deep.
Yeah, are you married, Dagmar?
Oh no, I am just 24 years old
Too young?
and way too young.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess career. Tell us about your first job. How did you get your first job? What was it? And is it programming related?
Ooh, my first job or my first programming job?
Your first job. I'm very curious about the first thing you did.
My first job. Oh, wow. The first thing I did that was a real job was I worked in a warehouse. So it was sort of, I guess today, like Amazon or something like that, like a company where you could just order stuff over the phone and they would ship it to you. So I was working in the warehouse, um, taking orders and like going into the shelves and fetching clothes and stuff like that for people. Um, and it was a very sort of introverted job. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I just had like a printer would print out a list of things and I would go get them. And um, it's something I've thought a lot about that in retrospect, that, you know, a lot of my friends at the time, they would get these more sort of extroverted jobs where you would work as a cashier, or you would work somewhere where you had to talk to customers or people. And I somehow I got into this track of like very lonely, introverted jobs where you don't talk to anybody, you don't have any coworkers or anything. And yeah, that was weird, and I didn't like it very much, but it was interesting to make money. It was interesting to see that you can sort of trade your time for money.
What was the first programming job that you did?
Right. The first programming job I did was as a web developer. And I was pretty young at the time. I was like 18, I think. We have these programs here in Sweden where when you're in high school, then you have to go every year and try a job. And you can try any job. You just have to go and find it for yourself. and somehow somebody helped me get a job at like a little web development company, and um, I learned how to make web pages with. We were using PHP at the time, and it was um, it was just for 2 weeks, but then we had to go back to school. But the people at this company, they liked me enough that they said, "Hey, if you ever want to make a little extra money, just let us know, and you can work for us in your spare time." And I thought that seemed amazing, so I immediately asked them, like, "Hey, can I have some work, please?" Because I love programming anyway, and they were offering to pay me to do programming, which was crazy. Um, so we did that, and originally it was just like a couple of hours here and there, but I just did more and more of it, and I tried to get as much work as possible. And um, it looked like at one point it looked like I was gonna get like a full-time job doing web development, but I ended up getting a different job because I applied for a different job at the same time, sort of. And yeah, so I was doing web design for consulting for like a year maybe, and then applied for a different job. Instead of getting full-time web development, I got a different job doing embedded development, and it was a job in the textile industry. So there was this company that they were creating sort of ATMs for clothes, um, and it turns out that like hospitals and big restaurants and airports and stuff like that, they have a lot of uniforms, and they like to know where the uniforms are because employees lose uniforms or they don't wash their uniforms or whatever. Um, and there's this whole market of people who want to track uniforms. And I ended up working at a company where we built machines to keep track of uniforms. And I had to learn a bunch of different things, like because they had built this sort of like they were going a little overboard with doing everything themselves, which is, it's like not the recommended approach, but they really liked it. So they had just built everything themselves, and I had to learn like embedded programming, assembly, and C for 8051
Oh,
chips, and
wow.
it was
Okay.
PHP and my I think Postgres SQL for report systems, and C++ for machine control, and yeah, it was like all kinds of stuff going on in one place, and it was a great job. And I think that's sort of where I learned that you can be every kind of programmer. Like, you don't have to be a web developer or a
Exactly.
mobile developer.
Hmm.
Um, you can just be like a programmer, and they throw tasks at you, and you're like, sure, I'll figure it out. Because that's what I had to do at that job, which was amazing, I think, and I'm really grateful that I had it. Um, and I think that sort of it very much inspired my career from then on to never feel like, oh, I can't do this because I'm not a XYZ programmer. Like I think a lot of people see themselves that way. They think that they are a web developer, or even these days is even worse. Like, people think that I'm a React developer or a Laravel developer or Next.js developer, whatever. And you can be any kind of developer. You just have to try something new.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
completely
so
agree
that
with
that
that.
was my first 2 jobs there. Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Um,
Um,
okay. How did you move on to Nokia and then Apple, I guess?
mm. So Nokia, they had an office in Norway where they make the Qt framework that KDE was based on, the KDE desktop.
Hmm.
And I don't know if people use KDE these days, but back then it was pretty popular. And they had an office in Norway where people worked on the Qt framework. And I always thought that would be sort of my dream job, because it's like a big company working on an open source framework, and um, I thought I could just apply for a job and see what happens. And I did, and it turned out that they liked me, and they offered me to come up there. And I didn't really have a plan. Um, it just, I was really surprised that they liked me, and that sort of just changed the course of my life immediately. And I moved from Sweden to Norway, which was like, I don't know, 5-6 hour drive, so it wasn't terribly far. But um, I know that like in Europe, we have a lot of small countries and they're right next to each other. And if you're in Africa, for example, I'm sure that like the countries are much bigger and it's a bigger deal
Hmm.
to move to a neighboring country.
Oh, it's a huge deal.
Yeah, and here it was pretty easy and pretty smooth. Um, but you know, I was 24 years old like you when this happened. I got a job in the neighboring country, and I thought I got to take this chance. You know, so I did. And when I started, I think they looked at my sort of history in open source, and they saw that, oh, you used to work on the Conqueror browser in KDE. Cool. You should work on browsers here. So they sort of put me on the team that worked on WebKit, because Nokia used to make, well, they used to make all kinds of stuff. They used to make browsers for their phones, right? And those phones were based on WebKit, just like Apple uses. And they just put me on the WebKit browser team in Nokia in Norway, and that's how I ended up working there. And then that was really great for about 2 years. And then Nokia made this big strategic change that they said that now we're going to partner with Microsoft and we're going to use Windows Mobile as our phone platform. And myself and basically all of my coworkers, we were big fans of Linux. And that's sort of what we wanted to do, was work with Linux stuff. So when management told us that, hey, this is a Windows company now, then we just wanted to do something else. We didn't feel like working with Microsoft stuff, so we tried to get jobs elsewhere. And somebody from Apple contacted me and said like, oh, I heard the news about Nokia. Like, are you interested in a job here? And I said, sure, very interested. So that's how I ended up with them. But it was a bit weird to get hired by Apple, actually, because I got they got in touch with me and asked if I was interested in a job, and I had to go interview. So they flew me over to California to interview, and I thought it was a great day. Like, I met with so many people. I thought things went well, and then I flew back to Norway, and then I got an email a couple days later and said like, sorry, it's not going to work out. And they didn't explain why, and I just felt like that sucks. And then I wait a few days, and then somebody else from Apple contacts me and says like, hey, can you come back and interview again? And I had to go over again and do another full day of interviews with new people.
That's insane.
And
okay.
Yeah, that was a bit weird. And then I went back to Norway, and they emailed and said, yeah, you got the job. And then it turned out that the problem originally was that the first team that I met was the iPhone team, and they were not allowed to hire people remote. And because I didn't have a visa for the US, I would have to be remote, and they were not allowed to hire anybody remote to work on iPhone back then. So they just like said, sorry, we don't have a job for you. But the second time I went, it was like for the Mac OS team, and they were allowed to hire remote, so they hired me, and that's how I ended up at Apple. And my original job at Apple was browser user interface developer, but I never made a single modification to the browser user interface.
What did you do then?
But that was I just worked on the browser engine.
Okay. Okay.
and worked on like performance and website compatibility, but I never made a single UI change, even though my official title was like UI engineer or something like that. My title eventually changed, but that was what my job was
Okay.
really supposed to be.
Um, why did you leave Apple then?
Well, I left in 2017, as I mentioned earlier, after the American election, and I felt like it really changed the attitude inside of the company. Because when I started at Apple, people were really excited about programming, and we were excited to make a browser, the web, and all that stuff. And in 2016 and 2017, people who used to talk about programming all day, they were now just talking about politics all day, and they were so upset about, um, all these things that Americans are upset about. And I just felt like this is not a healthy environment for me. Like, I don't care enough about these topics, and I definitely don't want to argue. Um, and I didn't necessarily agree with all of the things that the company was doing, because the company started taking sort of public policy positions, and I didn't like that either, because I felt like, and I've always felt like companies should be neutral. I guess it should be a neutral place where you can work and focus on work, and people can have whatever political or religious opinions and faith and stuff like that. Like, everybody can be welcome, because we are here to work on something. We're here to build a product and to serve our customers. We're not here to change, we're not here to change society. And that was maybe the main reason that I wanted to leave that whole space and leave American companies in general, I guess, at the time.
Okay. Then did you was SerenityOS started when you were working in Apple, or did it happen afterwards?
No, it was afterwards. So yeah, after I left Apple, I lasted about 6 months, because I was just doing drugs and living very unwholesome existence. And um, that's the thing that just, when I didn't have a job to keep me focused on anything productive or anything useful or anything wholesome, um, it just spiraled out of control very quickly. And so it took me about 6 months, and until I had to go to rehab, because my family told me that, like, you can't do this. Like, you have to go. Um, and it was after that that I came out and started SerenityOS. So SerenityOS was um, directly a consequence of going through rehab and going through the 12-step program, learning the Serenity Prayer, and just wanting to hold on to it. I wanted to sort of create some kind of structure that would um, force me to hang on, I guess, to this new way of life that I had learned. And I think it's been very effective, because I still think about these things every day. I still practice the things I learned, and life is very different today, but it's just different in good ways, not bad ways.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I've had the tremendous fortune and privilege of being able to turn this into a job, because people like what I do and they want to support it, and it's allowed me to not only support my family in this way, but to like give jobs to other people, um, which is something that I never dreamed would happen in my life. And so there's just a lot of good things that come out of it, and it
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
reinforces the idea that this was a good thing, and I have to hold on to it as best as I can.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very. I think that for me, it wasn't really exactly the project that got me hooked on. It was the story behind it. I think I read a tweet, or I heard you talk and you were like, oh, it was this therapy project I started and it became big, and that actually was like, whoa, okay, tech can be something more than more meaningful than just products and coding and all of that. So yeah, that got me hooked on. Why the old theme though? Why didn't have like a really modern theme and or a different one?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So SerenityOS, if you haven't seen it, it looks like Microsoft Windows from the 1990s or from 2000 maybe.
Yeah.
And it was the computer system that I used as a teenager. And I don't know, I think in a lot of ways, like the things that you do as a teenager, even though they seem sort of silly and inconsequential at the time, um, something inside of you captures a snapshot of those things, and it stays with you forever because you're just so impressionable and you're so emotionally active as a teenager that the music you listen to when you're a teenager, for example, you just love it so much,
Yeah.
and your whole life you're going to love that music. And when you're 25 or 35 or 45 or whatever, it's harder to connect with things in that same way. And for me, I really connected with Windows in the late 90s because I loved computers and I was using them all the time. And it just made such an impression on me that stuck with me. And I think that's a large part of why, I wanted to make an operating system. And I thought, well, what's the most beautiful look for a computer? Obviously, the stuff I used when I was a teenager.
Yeah, obviously.
Uh, obviously. And,
Okay.
it was just me. There was nobody to have a discussion with about these things. I was just like following my heart. And I thought, I'm just going to do what seems the most obviously objectively beautiful to me, which was this.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, but I think it kind of worked out in a good way because I'm not the only person who grew up in those years and
Yeah.
who had access to computers, and it sort of attracted a lot of like-minded people around my age, and that was just, yeah, it kind of worked out. And interestingly, though, I found that there are a lot of young people now, like people who are maybe 18 years old now, who think that these 90s software is really beautiful. So we're sort of coming back again, where now the kids think that that's cool. And I suppose it's a bit like, if you look at stuff from the 1980s, like music, um, and people today are listening to it again and they think, oh, music was so cool 30, 40 years ago.
Hmm.
And these things just go in cycles. And it's funny um, that the kids enjoy this as well, because looking back on the way Microsoft Windows was in the 90s, it's like they didn't have the choice. Like they didn't have the graphical capabilities to build a
Yeah.
really flashy
Yeah.
system, so they just made something very practical. And now you can do anything, but um, I don't know. It was so beautiful to me back then. That's the
Uh,
reason.
all right. All right. What OS is like your daily driver now?
Well, right now I'm using a Mac for the most part, but I also have a machine with Ubuntu Linux on it.
Okay.
And I think I like both. I haven't used Windows in many, many years, so I don't know how it's like these days, but I like both Mac OS and Linux. What are you using down there?
Um, I personally use Windows,
Hmm.
and on another PC I use Ubuntu as well. But there are people
Okay.
that use Mac and all of that. Mostly it's a Windows ecosystem here, though. Windows and Android.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a lot of experience with Windows recently, but I grew up using it, like I said, and I always thought it looked beautiful. So,
Now you've kind of moved on to the Ladybird browser, and what's happening to Serenity OS? Are you involved in any way? Are you managing it? What's happening there?
So I'm not involved anymore. And the thing that happened was after we started building a browser, so we started building Ladybird. I just really liked working on browsers, and I kind of stopped working on the rest of SerenityOS, even though I didn't really notice it at the time, but um, I was having too much fun with browser stuff. And after a couple of years, um, I realized that we have these two huge projects in one tiny space. Because most GitHub projects are like one piece of software, but SerenityOS had like 20 pieces of software, maybe like all existing in one space. And the biggest chunk with the most activity was the browser. And it was just not really practical for many reasons to share the space anymore. So um, I decided that we're going to fork the project so that people who want to work on a browser, they can work on a browser. People who want to work on an operating system can work on the operating system. And, it was a weird emotional thing because I started SerenityOS just for myself. And um, a lot of people had joined, but like in the beginning, it was just me. And so to walk away from that felt really strange. But at the same time, like it continues to exist, but now the people who work on it are those who really care about working on operating systems. And I think it's better for the project to be in the hands of people who really want to do that stuff instead of me being in charge but not really paying attention to anything. So um, my hope was that this would make both projects healthier by sort of allowing them to be focused on. And then the other side of what happened was also that a lot of companies were interested in sponsoring Ladybird, our browser specifically, but they didn't care about sponsoring SerenityOS. So for that reason, it also made sense to split it up so that if somebody wanted to sponsor us, they wouldn't have to worry that we're going to spend their money on Windows 2000 UI development stuff, which they might not care about,
Yeah.
even though it is objectively beautiful, obviously.
All right, all right. So wait, does that mean that you completely transferred ownership of the project to the maintainers?
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. So I just transferred the ownership, and a while afterwards, I made myself not a maintainer. So I have no connection to the project anymore, and it is now in the hands of the maintainers. And I hope that that will be a good thing long term. I see that people are still working on it every day, so that's lovely. And um, in the past, like I had a very strong idea of where I wanted the project to go, and I think in many ways it's better that the project can go where it wants to go. Um, and it didn't feel right for me to sort of force my ideas onto the project, onto the community, if I'm not participating in the work anyway. Um, the people who do the work on such a project should be the ones who decide what happens to it, I think. So now, yeah, it's in a better place in that sense.
Okay, okay. That's pretty interesting, actually. Okay, so you moved, people were interested in the browser part of SerenityOS, I guess. I'm actually very curious to know why. Why did they specifically focus on the browser? Why not the operating system or any other pieces of software you guys wrote?
Right. So like every sponsor I talk to, they have slightly different reasons for why they like us and why they want to help us. But I think on the whole, if you look at the web, it is an amazing invention. It is like this giant nervous system that brings us all together all over the world. We can sit here and have this conversation in a web browser, even though we're so far apart. And it's just a lovely human invention, I think. And in recent years, power over the web has been concentrated to a small number of companies that have huge amounts of money, and they have their own sort of incentives and agenda for what the web should be. And um, I think, and we believe, and a lot of our sponsors believe as well, that it would be a good thing if there was a browser that didn't have any of these big companies interfering with it. Like there wouldn't be any interest from, for example, the advertising industry to control and make sure that people have to look at the ads, and that's a big thing. Or from like commerce in general, like keeping track of what people are doing so that they can figure out better ways to sell you stuff. Um, like the internet and the web is an amazing resource for humanity. We should have a totally independent browser that serves humanity instead of serving companies. And ultimately, that's sort of what all of our sponsors have in common, that they see that and they're like, yeah, that sounds good. That should be a thing. Um, and we kind of got lucky in a way that um, we were just in the right place at the right time, because I didn't start building a browser because I wanted to provide an independent alternative browser for the world. I just started building a browser because it was fun. But over time, it so happened that there a gap appeared in the market, I guess, for an independent browser. And it turns out that people are really, really interested in the idea of that, because there are a lot of browsers, but all of the engines in those browsers, like all of the software that those browsers are built on, is essentially um, either made by Google or paid for by Google. And that is not a healthy way for the web ecosystem to exist, I believe. I think it's great that Google does so many good things for the world and for the web, and they provide great services. But I think the web is too important to be controlled by a single company like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of that's like a combination of my feelings about it and what many of our sponsors feel. Like, obviously, I don't speak for our sponsors, but that's something that we commonly talk about.
Yeah, I completely agree. But before Ladybird, what was your favorite browser, I guess?
I used Firefox the most, I think, before, and I still use Firefox every day. I use all the big browsers every day because Ladybird is not strong enough yet to be an everyday browser. But I'm a little bit special because I'm in the browser industry, so I try to use all browsers. I don't recommend that everybody use all browsers, but I kind of have to see what they're doing. But I've used all the major browsers. I've used Safari every day. I've used Firefox every day, Chrome. Um, the most recent browser I installed was Brave, which I'm testing a bit now. And I think that's a very interesting concept as well, like taking Chrome and then removing all the Google stuff and putting in more privacy stuff. It's a nice concept, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So recently, the Ladybird browser was converted to a nonprofit. Um, Tell us why it became a nonprofit, what your role exactly is there, and all sorts of stuff. And people on Twitter were asking you how you like it out there. You know, do you enjoy these new roles like fundraising or meetings and all the corporate stuff?
Right. So we decided to make it into a nonprofit because we had suddenly we had people giving us money to work on it, and that was very strange and a bit surprising. And I was not prepared for it when in 2023 Shopify decided to sponsor Ladybird, and I didn't have sort of a financial to be able to receive money. And they were still so nice about it that they essentially just sent me the money cash just to me, because
Wow. Okay.
they just trusted me to take care of it. And that was very nice of them. And afterwards, it turned out that there are more companies that want to sponsor, and we realized that like this is not sustainable. Like I can't just like receive cash donations essentially.
True.
This is not serious. And like what the hell am I going to tell the tax office, you know? So but I got, at the same time, I got very lucky because I met Chris Wanstroth, who's one of the founders of GitHub, and he was a big fan. He's always been a big fan of browsers and big fan of open source, obviously. And we started talking about what if we would make a nonprofit to run Ladybird and like try to turn it into a real product. Because when I met Chris, this was like in the middle of 2023, we were not really, Ladybird was not on track to become a product anytime soon. Like we were just having fun. And we thought about what if we would like take this very seriously instead and say, we're going to make a product and we're going to have a deadline and a schedule. And we will tell the whole world that if you want, you can become a sponsor of this project if you care about these things that we're doing. And he helped me set that up. So he's in California. So we created a nonprofit in California. And we started talking to like companies that might be interested in sponsoring and stuff. And one of the big reasons that I wanted to create a nonprofit was I wanted to create a structure where if in the future I would go crazy or I would start drinking or taking drugs or something like that, there would be all these mechanisms in place that would protect Ladybird and protect the project. And by creating a nonprofit, that means that it's sort of legally required to spend the money on the goals of the nonprofit. So the nonprofit has like all this documentation that says like we're going to build a browser, and we can't just take that money and spend it on something else. And that makes me sleep better at night, I guess, because it's sort of protected from myself.
Yeah, I can understand.
But I think it also, it protects the sponsors too, you know, because the sponsors know that they're giving money, but they know that that money can only be spent on one thing. It's the thing that they cared about sponsoring. So it's a good structure in that way. And it's also, obviously, it's also good because it makes the donations tax deductible. So, because what we're doing is meant to be sort of a public good, a good for the world. So, in California, you get a lot of tax benefits if you do something that is for good rather than for profit, which is nice. And yeah, that was sort of why we made the nonprofit. But how do I like it? Mixed feelings, to be honest. I like to program the computer, and I wish I could be programming the computer the whole day. But if I just program the computer the whole day, then this doesn't go as fast as it should or as it could. And I have a lot more leverage to do more for the project if I spend my time on fundraising or management or going on podcasts, for example.
Yeah.
To sort of get people interested in the project. And um, like as much as I would love to sit and program all day, that's not the highest return on investment activity that I could do. And I have feelings about that, but I also just have to realize that I should do probably the most valuable thing more of the time. But it's fun. It's in the past, I used to think that I was very introverted, and I guess in some ways I am, but this is also teaching me very much that I can talk to strangers. I don't have to be afraid of people. I can do public speaking. I don't have to be scared of that. And I think in many ways, like addiction in the earlier part of my life made me think that I was afraid of people and that I was afraid of crowds and I wanted to be by myself. But it's not that I didn't like people. It's just that I just wanted to keep my secret and live, like that. So it's been eye-opening in many ways.
Yeah. Okay. So for the browser, is the dream for it to be always open source and always ad-free and always independent?
Oh yeah. Yes, definitely. And we want to do something different. So the traditional browser business model has been to sell search. So like you make a browser and then you go and make a deal with Google or Bing or whoever and say like, we're going to send all of our user searches to you and you will pay us for that. And that's how all the big browsers have been funded, right? And then you have some other funding models like Brave has been doing cryptocurrencies and privacy ads. And there are other browsers that try other things, but the search one has been the biggest one. And we wanted to do something very different. We don't want to make money from our users. In fact, we don't really want to make money at all. We just want to make a browser and make it available for people because we think that the web is important to humanity. And there should be an independent way to access the web where you're looking at it through an unbiased lens. You're not looking at the web through the lens of an advertising company or somebody who wants to make money. You're just looking at the web as it is. So our business model is we don't monetize our users. We don't make deals with search. We don't have any cryptocurrencies. In fact, the only thing that we do is we say, you can sponsor this project. And it's a little bit unusual. And that means that we're never going to have the same kind of budget that the big browsers have, because I don't think we're going to get, $1 billion sponsorship. So we'll never have the kind of money that Google has to spend. But that's okay, because I think that a small team that cares about what they're doing can still make something useful, and we can still make something that people would love and people would use. And it doesn't have to have every feature in the world. It doesn't have to work on every phone that exists. It just has to work on some things and has to work well enough that we can have some users that appreciate it and that like using it. And I think that's worth exploring, but it hasn't been done before. So we don't know how it's going to go. It's not very common. People don't try to build browsers because there isn't a lot of money in it. There isn't really any money, I think. But we just acknowledge that. Like we say, like, okay, we understand we're not going to make money from this. But maybe we can find enough sponsorship that we can keep a small team, like 10 people or something like that, and just make this happen. And if it works, that means that we make something that people care about, people love. And that's right now. That's just what we're going to try to find out. Like, is this going to work? I hope it will. I believe it will.
Yeah. So one of the biggest questions I had was, how do you form a company that upholds these values for like decades to come, you know? A couple of decades later, how do we know, how do you make sure that they make it, open source and ad free and all of that?
Right. Well, how do you preserve the values for decades to come?
Yeah.
I think a large part of that is creating the right structure. So we've created our nonprofit, which has sort of a mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the mission is very specific. It's like, we're going to build a browser. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to, try to build any other products. We're not going to try to find new ways to make money from a browser. We're just going to build a browser that lets you browse the web, and it's going to be open source and unmonetized forever. And I think in many ways, the things that I learned from SerenityOS and the things that I learned where I associated myself with the word Serenity was very, very powerful, because now I'm stuck. I'm the Serenity guy forever.
I guess there are like a bunch of technical questions that I would like to ask, but we're running out of time. Maybe if you could answer them very quickly, maybe we can get through
Yeah.
all of them. So, like, how many people are on the Ladybird browser team?
Oh, wow. So I think right now we have 7 full-time people who are being paid to work on it. And then we have a community of developers who work on it in their spare time. And that's maybe like 20, 30 people, something like that. So it's a mid-sized open source project, I would say.
Okay, okay. So you're about to, I guess, transition to the Swift programming language, and I guess you really liked working with it. Was that the main reason you guys switched over?
So that's going to be a very long process, I think. We recognize that, so the Ladybird is written in C++, and C++ has some flaws that are very hard to address, that are not really being addressed by the C++ language community and the committee, and in particular with regards to safety and security. So in order to build the best browser that we can, we have to do the right thing for our users, which is to try to make a secure browser. And it just unfortunately seems like C++ is not going to allow us to do that long term, because they're not developing the language towards safety.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that we needed to adopt a safe language for the long term. And we looked at a couple of different ones, and the one that people liked working in was Swift. So it was a very practical decision. Like, we just tried different languages and decided, okay, people like this one, let's do this one. Of course, people have accused me of being paid by Apple to say Swift, to choose Swift, but I have not received any money from Apple in many years. But I did used to receive a paycheck. But no, but we chose it because people liked it, and we need a safe language for the long term. And yeah, that's simple. But like moving towards Swift is going to be a long incremental process. It's not like, oh, we're rewriting everything in Swift now. Instead, we're just going to take these parts that are sensitive and of the browser and sort of convert them. So the idea is that, like, code that is security sensitive, so stuff that deals with suspicious inputs, like HTML parsing or CSS parsing or talking to HTTP services, stuff like that. We want to make it as safe and secure as possible. So those areas we're going to focus on converting. And yeah, but it like the whole browser is not going to be Swift for like the next 5 years, probably.
Okay.
It will take time.
I guess somebody asked, looking back at your career, what would you say are the most critical skills or experiences that have contributed to your success as a programmer?
Oh, I guess that's a good question. I think my first programming job that I had full time that I mentioned earlier, where I had to learn to be web developer, embedded developer, C++ developer, like all of these things, that was really, really impactful. And I would say I picked up this skill of not being afraid of new domains and just being willing to say yes to any programming related job and just figure it out as you go. I think that's probably one of the skills that allowed me to do well. And because I know a lot of people, they look at like, oh, here are some jobs that are available, but I don't know that technology that well. I'm not going to apply for this job. Like you can apply for any job. If you know a little bit of programming, you can learn more programming. If you know one framework, you can learn another framework. And you can just throw yourself into these things. And I think I've just been very willing to do that. And that helped me more than anything else in my career, I think.
Okay, that's very beautiful. I guess in the highest level of abstraction, how would someone go about building a browser from scratch? If I just decided right now, what would be like the higher level way of doing it?
So if you want to build a browser from scratch, I would start, and you can start in many places, but I would probably start with HTML and trying to write a little piece of code that just reads HTML and turns it into some kind of representation. So it depends on what language you're using, but let's say that you're in JavaScript, that you would just write a function that gets a HTML string and then turns it into an object graph, where you have every node in the HTML represented as an object, and start with that. And then something that's really fun is if you build that, and then the next thing is you build some basic CSS, and then you figure out how to check if a CSS rule matches an element. It's really quite easy to implement once you figure out how to do it. And it's one of those things where if you do that, you're going to fall in love with browser programming, because everything else is just like a big, big fruit outside of that little core kernel. So like the parsing HTML and then running CSS on it, building a miniature browser of that, I think that's a really good way to start. Okay. And then you can just layer everything on top. And there's a great book about this stuff called Web Browser Engineering. It's on the web. It's on the website address is browser.engineering. And I totally recommend that. It describes in great detail, and you can follow along and implement a browser in Python. And they show you how to do all kinds of very interesting things. So if anybody's interested, definitely go to browser.engineering.
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess as a very last closing, I am basically done with most of my questions, and I'm very happy that we got through all of these. Is there anything, I guess one last thing I would like to mention is, what would be the biggest lesson life has taught you? You've been through a lot, you've experienced a lot, did a lot as well. So what would be the biggest lesson, I guess? Something you would advise the 24-year-old version of you, I guess, or me and every part of my community.
Tell the truth. Always. And try to live as truly as possible. And if you can't tell the truth, then at least don't tell a lie. That's something that I took a very long time to understand this, and it would have helped me greatly if I understood it earlier. Always tell the truth.
Okay.
And I think everything good comes out of telling the truth. And looking for the truth is always the right thing to do. And don't be afraid to disagree with people. if you feel in your heart that something is true, even if people tell you that it's not, then you don't have to be afraid to disagree. That's another thing that took me a very long time as well, because I just wanted to get along with people, and you can't always get along, and that's okay.
Yes. All right. I'm
Yeah.
done on my side. Is there anything you'd like to say or talk about? I don't know if there's anything. You're
Well,
pretty welcome.
I'm honestly very curious about. You said that your podcast is popular in the Addis Ababa tech scene, and I'm really curious what that looks like. Like, what is the Addis Ababa tech scene? Like, what kind of stuff do you have going on there?
Oh, okay. So the tech community here, it's not as popular, it's not as much as we would like it to be, but there are a few initiatives and individuals that are trying to make a really good impact across different things. So embedded systems, web programming, games, and it's like it's upcoming. It's just starting off, and in fact, this episode is probably it's probably going to be one of the most famous episodes here because we really don't have the chance to talk to individuals like you. And also, we're just stepping our foot into the open source ecosystem, basically. So, products like Skull Archive, Better Auth, and a bunch of others are just popping up and they're going viral over Hacker News and a bunch of other places. So it's very young. It's mostly built by and composed by university students, freelance workers, and remote devs and everything. So it's mostly web and mobile dev, but games and other tech scenes are also up and coming. So it's mostly like that. It's very early, it's very young, but I guess I'm playing my role into inspiring people and creating this opportunity for them to actually engage with amazing people like you. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it all.
That's awesome. So is it like you say that it's very young? Is it almost entirely young people as well? Like university students and stuff?
Yeah, I would say like 90% of it is young people, like high schoolers and university students, and maybe postgraduates. So like, uh, from the age of 25 to 30, or maybe even 35, but not a lot of people. So the most of the people that are making impacts and are actually very inspiring here are very young, and they instantly start a startup and build a product and all of that spaz, I guess. That's mostly what it's like here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've never met a browser developer from Ethiopia or from anywhere in Africa, I don't think. And that would be amazing because because I've never met any, and also because you have so many interesting languages and
do.
so many interesting alphabets and stuff.
True.
And
Would you like to try some Amharic phrases, I guess? So like you saying, well, hello friends would be ሰላም ነው ጓደኞቼ.
salam. You
ሰላም
lost me
ነው
after salam.
ሰላም ነው
Salam now.
ጓደኞቼ.
Guadagnoche.
Yeah, you actually got it.
All right.
Yeah, ሰላም ነው ጓደኞቼ.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, but that's something that I think would be amazing to see. Like, we would love to have people join our project if anybody's interested. And I think it's been historically, like, a lot of people don't know about browser development because it's just been done at these big companies.
Yeah.
But it's really something that anybody can do. Like, you don't need at least not for Ladybird, you don't need a big expensive computer to work on this. Like, anybody can do it. And it's a lot of fun. And if anybody is listening who's interested in working on a browser, maybe making sure it has really nice Ethiopian language support, for example, there's certainly space for that, and that would be really awesome. But it's really cool to hear that you have this sort of burgeoning tech scene, and I hope that we will be able to reach somebody with something interesting here.
Yeah. In fact, I tried to build a browser in Rust, taking inspiration
Mhm.
from you. That did not go very well. That was
It's difficult.
it's very difficult, yes. I guess you could tell us how people can get involved in the project and all of that, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're interested, we are on Discord. So we have a Discord server where we hang out and talk all day about working on the browser. It's not so much a social Discord for having fun. It's more like an office Discord for working on stuff. But that's where you'll find us. So if you're interested, just come and visit. I also have my YouTube channel where I post videos of myself like fixing little bugs in Ladybird. And if you want to see how that works from like start to finish, like finding a bug and fixing it, you can see many examples of me doing that. And a lot of people tell me that after they saw a video, they realized that they could probably do that too. And it gave them the courage to try, and they come and they fix something. And if you're listening and this sounds at all interesting, go and check that out. I promise it's not impossible. You can do it. And yeah, you'll find us on ladybird.org, by the way, I should mention. That's
Okay.
where our project is, and all the links are there.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful, and I really had a really incredible and inspiring time. You're a very inspiring and very wholesome person. I'm very lucky to have this conversation with you and have you on this podcast along with the community. So I would just like to say thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Your impact is reaching way across all over here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a good time. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.